Hey everyone, it's Bytrius here, and before we even start today's video, I just wanted to say thank you for 1,000 subscribers. That is an absolutely insane number, and I'm honored that 1,000 of you enjoy my content enough to want to see more. And I figured, I would give back a little bit by kind of giving you an inside look at how my mind works when I map, and give you 10 tips to mappers that or these are just kind of things that I see often in beginner mappers when they make these kind of mistakes that I think can be very easily corrected. So I like to go over 10 things today that I think could severely like improve your mapping just by keeping these types of things in mind. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is a big criticism in the Beat Saber mapping community, and that is mapping down, down, up, up. What is that? It's basically just mapping things that go like this: down, down, up, up. Now, at first, that doesn't seem so bad, but if you want to take your mapping to the next level, you need to cut this out. It doesn't matter if you are doing it like you're spacing stuff out. If as long as you keep mapping down, down, up, up stuff, even if you're incorporating doubles into it, this to me just is boring. I don't like it when maps do this. I think that if you want to take your mapping to the next level, you need to think about how you're going to take that map and start using different directions, whatever kind of patterns you're coming up with. So something like this is infinitely more interesting, where it's down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. It's a lot more interesting representation. There's a lot more going on. And, maybe the song might not call for something as interesting, but you really got to figure out kind of what sounds are being played in the song and try and mimic that motion rather than just trying to get a note on a plane. When you just have this just screams note on a plane just to get the job done. If you're trying to make something interesting, you're going to try and really mess with what direction the note's going to be going in. Something like this is infinitely more interesting than if you were to just go down, down, up, up. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is one of my favorite things to do in mapping, and it's 3 words: copy, paste, mirror. And people might think that, oh, isn't that just like being lazy if you're copy pasting and mirroring? Not necessarily. I personally do not think copy paste mirror is lazy. I think it is very efficient and keeps things very consistent. So let's say I'm making like a chorus for a song, and this is how it starts at it. Like it starts with like this big boom, the chorus comes in. So the next time this chorus comes in, when it comes in for the second time, I want to take that chorus and I want to just copy it, paste it, and then mirror it. It will feel just as fresh to the player while also being just as familiar. If they like if you're a mapper, I think most mappers will agree that they can catch when something isn't copy pasted and mirrored, because when something feels copied and pasted, at that point then it feels lazy and boring. Literally, it's just one extra button when you copy paste something. You just press this little thing up in Chrome Mapper. It might be different depending on what kind of mapper you're using. You could be using Mediocre Mapper Assistant. You could be using the official mapper from Beat Saber Official. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you are uh mirroring whatever you're copy pasting, and then always keep it mirrored no matter what. Never have it like going the same direction twice in a row. So if that chorus comes in a third, god forbid a fourth time, keep mirroring it every single time it comes around. So you can have it, if I have like a window notes like you're going down on the chorus right here on the first chorus, then it should be like this on the second chorus. Granted that the choruses, I'm assuming that they're the exact same structurally, like the third time it comes in, it should also be going back the same way. So you, and there's going to be a long enough gap in between when it is copy pasted and mirrored, to where the player is not going to really catch that it was copy pasted. The closer you condense the copy pasting, the more noticeable and lazy like it becomes. But moving on from that, I want to talk about flow for a bit, and using down notes on the start of a beat, or like beat 1, which are usually in any mapper these kind of big white bars right here. The reason why I jam out to my maps, and a lot of people like to jam out to my maps in particular, is because I'm always putting some kind of down emphasis on the white bar notes, or like on the notes that feel like it has some kind of bang going for it. So if I have a map that's like that has this like really good drums and really good kicks on those downbeats, I want to make sure that no matter what, there is some kind of down emphasis. So both of these windows are going down, and even though this double right here that's connected to it on this bar is going up, there is still at least some kind of down emphasis by it going down right here. As long as you have that, I think you are good for jamming out, because you can just keep it, because it's like you're playing the drums. You always like when you hit on that main beat, like in that start of the measure, you really want to make sure that you are putting a lot of emphasis on it to keep in time good. But yeah, so you always want to have some kind of down emphasis on the stuff, and this also best suits dance maps and stuff like that, and balance stuff. For stuff like tack or speed, maybe it's not going to be up your alley, but if you're specifically trying to make maps like me, or like some of your favorite dance mappers or balanced mappers or act mappers, that is generally the best way to go, is by always having down emphasis. Having up emphasis can work sometimes, but it's not going to feel nearly as good to play or as fun to replay as if you would have down emphasis. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is a thing that I do a lot in my maps called streams. If you're wondering what streams are, it is a bunch of notes that basically are connected in rapid succession. It can start on any kind of way, but generally it's like down, down, up, up stuff, but in just very fast succession, so that it's easy to read, but it's a long stream of notes. So this would be an example of a stream. And I know I mapped that pretty quick, but just to give you an idea of like when you're trying to make a stream like that, let's say they're taking like a break in between the streams. So maybe there's not a drum beat on beat 6 here of the 8 that we're going to see. So what we want to do is when there is a break, we do not then want to go back to doing down, down, up, up, like we talked about in the first tip. We want to, if we end on a down, we want to pull up all the time with whatever hand went down. So in this case, it is the right hand, the blue. We always want to pull up on those types of notes. It will feel infinitely better. So let's say I have something like this. So whatever hand you end on with the break is the hand that you basically want to start it with. Personally, I think sometimes with up notes you can get away, depending on the emphasis, of course, you can get away with doing something like that where you can take the pause, but personally, I think it will 9 times out of 10 flow a lot better if whatever note that you ended your stream on, you then use, like if it ends on like the right hand, you want to pull up into the right hand again to start the next bit of the stream. So if your stream has a break in it, use whatever hand you ended on to start it again. It's going to feel a lot less janky, especially for really fast stuff. It's going to feel really bad if someone is doing a really long stream or something, and then all of a sudden there's just a break and they can't read they can't read that. They're gonna miss the note probably. So you always want to make sure that whatever you're making is readable for that. And I think that um, taking the note and um, swinging with whatever hand you left off on will always be like that guarantee of being able to read it. But enough on that. I want to move on to something that trips up a lot of mappers, and that's how to connect notes properly. A lot of mappers I see, they're trying to always make these notes that really like reach around. Something like this is where you'll do something called bad cutting, where you'll try and swing down into this one, and then you'll try and swing up into this one, and you might hit it like on the side here. You always want to make sure that whatever notes you are connecting, that they're by like 45 degrees. Some we'll get into how to do 90s probably in another video if you guys like this one, and if you do like this, make sure to subscribe and comment, yada yada yada, plugs. But you always want to make sure that whatever note you're connecting it to is good enough to be able to full swing through it. So like this one, I can come down into this, and I have enough swing angle to where I can get into here. But if I was to put it from up here to here, I would probably want to connect an arc to it just so I can make sure that I'm getting that extra distance. We'll get into arcs and chains and all that fancy stuff later, but you want to make sure that whatever notes you're connecting, you are you can even do like silly palm ups like this, as long as it's connected properly. And I'm mostly talking for balanced mapping here and for dance mapping, but you really want to be careful with how far apart you're placing these notes, because otherwise the player might bad cut. You always want to make sure that it is close enough swing wise so that the player is not missing a bunch of notes and whiffing them and then feeling like they hit them, but it was just barely bad cut. It's a hard concept to talk about, but I would say go check out some ACK maps. They do ACK really well, and those are the maps that typically people will have really high scores on, like 99s and 98s and stuff, because they can full swing through the notes easier, rather than something like this where you really have to like swoop down under and you could potentially miss like by hitting it right up top here. Anyway, enough of that. I want to go into something I alluded to earlier, which was talking about arcs and chains and sliders and all of that fancy stuff. Now, a lot of mappers, when they discover this stuff, they're like a kid with a swear word, where they are just using it constantly in everything that they do, and thinking that it's like the greatest stuff in the world. So you basically want to not use them as much. You want to use these things very sparingly. And what I mean by that is, when you hear like a particular noise in a song that you really feel calls for an arc, then use your arc and make sure that there is a lot of time and emphasis given to that arc. You don't want to be making maps that look like a mess like this, where there's just arcs and chains everywhere. You want to make sure that whatever you're using them for, whether it's arcs or chains or sliders. I can't make a slider that fast because I'm not skilled enough. You want to make sure that you're not spamming them, because then things start to get really hard to read in the map. It becomes kind of a mess. It loses a little bit of its identity. And sometimes, yes, you can make that like the gimmick of the map. I would not do that unless you have enough experience to really make something like that work. But even in my earliest like arc and chain maps, I blatantly overused chains and arcs and kind of figured out what to do and what not to do. You want to really treat these things as like the cherry on top, like the frosting on your cake, um, because like otherwise it's just going to become a mess and it's not going to be as fun to replay. when you put down those arcs and chains and sliders in certain parts, um those are the parts that can become very memorable of your map, and what people are going to be like, oh, I really liked that section, I really want to go play that map just so I can like play that section, or like the vibe that that map gave and how good the representation was mapping wise. You want to make sure that you're just using them sparingly, and you're not just loading up the map, whether it's just a tiny section or it's littered throughout the whole map. You just really want to make sure that whatever you're doing, it's very justified that you're putting it there. So just, yeah, keep in mind to just use them very sparingly. Don't spam them unless you really know what you're doing with them, which I'm going to be honest, I don't think a lot of mappers even still really know what they're doing with arcs and chains, myself included. I'm still toying with things and figuring stuff out, but hey, it's just a good thing to get out there. Okay, big thing I want to talk about is these things. Stacks. Stack notes are just two notes like just stacked on top of each other. I see a lot of beginners spam these in their maps for extra representation when they could easily be using doubles. Now, why do I prefer doubles to something like stacks? I think stacks are good. I think you can use stacks effectively, but just like I was talking about with arcs, chains, and sliders, you should use these sparingly. Stacks don't have a lot of varied positions and can quickly get vision blocky because a lot of stack notes require you to use these uh center lanes once you want to get out of like boring stack territory. So you really want, and they can just get really vision blocky, and I think with doubles you have so much more varied space on where you can put your notes. And like I'm just trying to put like some examples of like what I can think double wise, like that really just like you can get so much out of using double notes for like basically the same exact representation, and utilize so much more of your 4x3 grid than if you were to put something like stacks, because then they just start to get really vision blocky, they're boring. You really want to avoid using stacks unless you've really got that skill to be able to find them and put them in an actable position, and find that really good slammy representation. I like to use these types of stack notes a lot, where it's just two stack notes, just a big slam, or I use towers to just like put a big slam. But yeah, just be sparing on your stacks and try and use doubles instead. You're gonna find there are a lot more varied patterns using doubles. Okay, another big thing I want to talk about that a lot of beginner mappers, particularly like speed mappers and stuff, do, that I cannot stand, and that is using jumps as a default to represent a sound. Please don't do this. This is boring. I don't like it when people use jumps constantly. It is so lame. This might work for certain things, but people literally just do it to make things extra hard when they don't need to be. And you could have so many more varied, interesting patterns. Maybe for certain types of songs, yes, it can be justified, and yes, it can be fun. However, most players, I find, don't really enjoy doing that stuff, especially when they have to do it in their non-dominant hand. I am a righty, so I do not like doing jumps in my left hand. They hurt my wrist and my brain. I don't like injuring my wrist over a silly virtual block slicing game. And I'm sure many of you people out there watching also don't want to hurt your wrist if you haven't already. So unless you are really mapping in that like upper echelon of speed, camellia, insane stuff that is just beyond me, maybe then go ahead and use it for that kind of challenge. But if you're just making like a regular like 5 to 8 notes a second even map, try to avoid using jumps as your default to make something hard. Because yes, they can be fun at times, and yes, they can be hard, but there's just so many more interesting things you can do by just making you spam your wrist, because it's just gonna injure people at the end of the day, or it'll just hurt your wrist in the long run, and when you get older, you'll regret it. Um, with that out of the way, I want to talk about something way different than jumps and talk about one of my favorite things to use called a window note. Now, a window note, if you don't know, is a note is basically a stack that has a window through it. Like you can see through the um like if this is where you're going to see when you're playing a map. It makes it so that you can see through the window of the notes. So there are ways to use window notes. My favorite types of window notes are ones that go down. Some people like to do a couple things that I'm going to show you that I'm not exactly a fan of. Can work in certain circumstances, but I personally do not like. I don't like up windows. This one is the only up window I think that really works well. This one works okay, but I think when it's paired with another window note is really the only time that you should be using up windows, because it's just better representation. This is a big one. Like these types of window notes, I really do not personally like. I used to use them a lot when I first started mapping. I don't anymore, because they can really start vision blocking you bad. Anything in the bottom row, like I know 2018 mapping is goated, but bottom row stuff can be really hard to read. If you're putting in window notes, you're just going like near that bottom row, you're just going to be making it hard to read for people, and can also cause some pretty bad claps if you're not careful. You can also do window notes like this, or like across, but these are things that delve more into tech territory and into very intense like dance or Fitbit territory that I think only really experienced mappers should be toying with. And okay, so we made it through 9 of the 10 tips. The last one I wanna say is a pretty obvious one, but maybe some people might be holding off because they're unsure about it. And I'm here to tell you that my last tip for you is just to be inspired by your mappers so much that you just study their map. Just not necessarily copy them verbatim, but just don't be afraid to be inspired by the mappers that you enjoy playing maps from. I mean, shoot, I still do it. Like this last year, a lot of my patterns have been very inspired by two of my current favorite mappers in the metal scene, which are Nitronic and Muffin. I think that they are two of a very small pool of mappers that really do metal well. And I think that I've incorporated a lot of their kind of pattern ideas into my maps and put my own spin on them. And I think it's made enhanced my maps a lot. And even like in years prior, like back in 2021 and even a little bit of 2022, I was playing a lot of my friend Joshua B's and Alice's maps because I just really dug how they did streams, how they did like angle changes, and I I was just really inspired, and I just took what they were doing and I kind of incorporated it into my own style. Again, not verbatim. I'm not taking their things, copying them and pasting them into my map necessarily. Um but I'm just taking their ideas and I'm looking at why they work in that specific situation, and then applying it to my map and seeing how exactly they got that to work. So like, do not be afraid to just grab the map files of your favorite mappers and just kind of copy them. Just like don't be afraid to be inspired by them. Like for me personally, if any of you like really dig my maps, please just go open them in Chrome Mapper or like Mediocre Mapper or Official or wherever you want, and just take a look at kind of how I do things and like any patterns that really stick out to you. And I would also like be very glad to break down more of my maps like I did with their Sphere and Letting Go back last year, I think I did. Maybe it was at the beginning of this year. I think I did that video, which was fun to do. But yeah, like please don't be afraid to just um go find play the game, and just be inspired by your favorite mappers. I'm constantly doing it. Whenever I feel like I am out of ideas for something, I go play the game and I go play the mappers I enjoy and see if they've done anything that really stands out to me. And yeah, it's always a good refresh. But anyway, that is going to do it for Bytrius's top 10 mapper tips. How long have I been recording for? Oh boy, this is a long one. It's almost 30 minutes. Oh boy. Um so I don't want to keep you here any longer. I know I've kept you for so long, but I just wanted to say again, thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. It means the absolute world to me. I've been making videos since I was 10 on different channels, obviously, but like I've never hit a milestone like this before, so it's truly just amazing how much support you guys have given me over the 4 years that I've been doing this whole mapping thing. I love you all, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Hope I didn't ruffle too many feathers of experienced mappers that maybe don't agree with me. But these are personally my tips and how I kind of map and get through things. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful day.